welcome to An Apple a Day with Dr. Amanda. I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome, have a seat. And fortunately today, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for YouTube. Today we have Raquel Burns, a behavior consultant working on her doctorate at Lehigh University, also a colleague of mine for many years that I've worked with closely, and a wife and a mother of Noah. So Raquel, well, thank you for joining us. I'm so glad to have you today. And we're going to get started. So I'd like you, Raquel, to just, what are the characteristics of a healthy mother?
So as I was thinking about this question, I quickly realized that the characteristics of a healthy mother applies to how I treat myself and my child. There are probably many more than what I'm going to mention today, but I narrowed it down to the top 5. So first, I was looking at having patience with yourself and your family. So taking breaks, slowing down, and practice how to respond calmly. I think it's really important to kind of help center yourself with this. And it's also a great way to model for Noah, who is going to be 16 months actually this month, how to kind of approach things throughout the day to not get overwhelmed, with stuff. My second one was having respect for yourself and your family. I firmly believe having self-respect is critical, and that the way we treat ourselves is how our children learn how to treat themselves and others. So respect for yourself, I was looking at includes so many things, like things that we put into our body, how we speak about ourselves is just a couple of examples. Additionally, I think we need to take a step back and think about how we interact with our children. So how do we speak to them, acknowledge their feelings? So the way in which we interact with our children models for them how they interact with others. At the end of the day, or after a situation arises, while I know I don't practice this routinely every single day, but I really try to reflect on the way I handle things. And I ask myself what I want my child acting and doing the same things I did. So if the answer is no, then I know it's time to rethink how I approach those situations. Being consistent, I think, is critical too. For myself, when you find something meaningful, and this is something that I've been really trying to work on, and I'll share some resources later on in our conversation today, but make sure you really take the time to do them. There's times that life's going to get in the way, but unless it's like an emergency, really critical emergency, don't let go of doing them. Allow yourself that time, because once you remove that from your daily life and your schedule, I find personally it's really hard to get it back. And it takes a long time sometimes before you realize that you forgot about it to really put it back into your schedule. So forming those habits is helpful. And it's also important for me to be consistent in my responses with Noah, as well as the routines and the times that I spend with him. The next one I thought about was being loving and supportive. So we tend to put others before ourselves. Identified and recognized who my support system is and who should be a part of my support system, as we all need people to lean on. We are that person for our children, and in order to continue being strong, we need outlets as well. So we need to know that we have a loving and supportive system around us. It's really critical to identify those members. And having empathy, self-empathy and empathy for others. So having self-empathy involves accepting that it's okay to feel. I was looking up some stuff surrounding this, and research shows that individuals who have best developed self-compassion skills are the most emotionally resilient. And learning to turn towards and accept painful feelings is challenging, but having self-empathy along with that support system allows us to continually grow as a person and be more open in mind and emotions for our children. So those are my top 5 that I really wanted to share with everybody.
Thank you, Raquel. That's a really great list, especially looking at, taking care of yourself so that you can take care of your own child, really making sure that you're intentional about time that you're spending with the child, and even really that developing of compassion and what that looks like to really have empathy and compassion for another person, making sure that you're interacting and communicating, and, really making, and I think that intentionality is a big piece that I heard, for yourself and for your family, and especially for your son. So thank you so much for those tips. And, again, thinking about how that can really impact. So again, for the audience, hopefully those are some things you're using, or really making, if you're having schedules and maybe it's not intentional, thinking perhaps, okay, is this the most intentional? I'm sure as a mom, it's a constant question, but just, being kind to yourself, but having those things in place. Raquel, what are some things that you've learned about yourself through this process of becoming a mom?
So when I was thinking about this, I would say a lot of who I was as a person before becoming a mom has remained the same in regard to certain qualities, such as thinking ahead and planning, which actually I became better at those. My love for projects and just being creative and spending time exploring new recipes. But I have geared these aspects of myself as a person and a mom towards my family instead of just myself. So I really tried to embrace the things that I am good at and that I really love to do, but now put it in this new aspect of my life. I also learned that there was a whole nother part of me that I really didn't know existed until I had them. And it was really hard for me to find the exact words to put it in, but I will say that being a mom has given my life a whole new meaning in the best way possible. There's times that I just look at him and I'm in awe as he explores the world, around him. And I also learned at times that I can become overwhelmed from the unknown and how things out of my control can impact Noah. And when this happens, that's when I reach out to my support system, like my husband, my friends, my family. It gives me an outlet to talk about these things that can become very overwhelming at times. And I think in the past, when something was bothering me or overwhelming me, I handled it maybe more independently. And I find that at this time, I guess being a mom, I realized that support system is even more important for me because it helps me to like recenter myself and to have the advice and support from others that they may be feeling the same way, or, look at it in this aspect and positive, from this angle. So I also remind myself that it's not about what I can't control, but what I can and how I handle that situation and how I teach Noah to do the same thing.
That's great. So again, I really like how you thought about how you haven't really changed per se as a person or like some of your values, but how it's helped you expand into, how do I plan and prioritize for my family, right? Some things outside of me or this new dynamic, with my husband, my son. And also I love that you realize that, okay, yes, there's some things I can do on my own, but reaching out for those support systems, and also realizing that other people may have felt the same way, whether it be, your support systems that, your mom who's been through childhood, through having you, and family or other people, and just being able to reach out and how that does help. So I really love that aspect. And again, realizing what you have control of and what you don't. So thank you. Those are really helpful and insightful. And hopefully for moms tuning in or moms to be, or those who want to be a mom one day, certainly these are great tips. And then Raquel, in terms of all these lessons as a mom, and I know you've given a lot of wisdom tips, what are some lessons you've learned? It could be the good, the bad, the ugly, but really just lessons that you've learned to keep growing.
So keep in mind that I've only been a mom for about 1.5 years. Realize that I still have a lot to learn and, different things, but in a short period of time that I have been a mom, I also think that this question was really nice to self-reflect on, like yearly, or even maybe with your significant other or even a group of friends. I think it's great to reflect back on things that are successes and things that may not be going well and how you want to change that. And I also want to say that the lessons that I'm going to share with you now are not all of them. And some of them I may not even be mentioning because I may even not recognize them at the moment. I may not realize that some of them didn't occur until like 5-10 years down the line. So the first one I'm going to say, and it's probably pretty cliche, but I think it's important, is that time does not slow down. And I think you recognize this more when you're taking care of somebody. So for me, it's Noah. And for others, it may be even somebody else, it might not be a child. But time passes by so quickly. I mean, just from him being a newborn until now, there was 1 month, in a matter of 2 weeks, he was saying mama, he was clapping hands, and then he was walking. It just was like this burst of exploration that happened with him. And we take pictures and videos of him constantly from the day he was born. And when you see them pop up on your phone, you see how different he looks now, what he knows how to do now versus what he was doing before, and just how he explores, the world. But I recognize that, we have work, we have house stuff, we possibly taking care of other kids or family members, bills and deadlines to meet. But allow yourself to like live in the moment and have fun, to sit back and just be present with your family, technology away, not worrying about the dishes that are piled up in the sink, because those moments that are happening, that happen so quickly, we can't get them back. And they're only here for so long. So I know other things still need to get done. And this is something I remind myself, like all the time, but I really try to ensure that I have time scheduled with my family. And this is going to be a learning curve for me too, as I go back into, work, because I have been home with him since he's been born until now. So I'm just entering back into the workforce. The thing that I've had some time separating my time was that I'd say about after he was 6 months, I started picking back up on working on my dissertation. And I still have to complete that, but I know that I'm not going to gain any extra time in the day. But some weeks will be off balance, and that's okay. It's going to happen, but I just can't lose sight of that bigger picture. So that was the first one. The second one is that feelings of guilt and failure can definitely be very strong at times. But knowing that it's okay to feel this way, and it's important to sort through your feelings and don't keep it in. Speak with someone that you feel comfortable confiding in. Being a first-time parent, and I'm sure even after the second, third, fourth, or fifth time, these feelings arise for one reason or another. Personal story for me is that I felt this in the very, very beginning. And for me, it was centered around trying to breastfeed. It wasn't working. With it, and before I had him, I didn't necessarily have it in my mind that I would exclusively breastfeed, but I didn't think it was going to be a very difficult journey necessarily. I didn't realize it doesn't just happen. So we struggled for the first 2 weeks, and I was concerned about his weight and his well-being, even though I know he was super tiny, but you could just tell he was hungry, so it was frustrating. We supplemented from the very beginning because he dropped in birth weight, but nothing cyclical like newborn does. But we were working on getting him back to his birth weight within the first week. And we were successful in doing that. But it was still, even knowing that was there was still some that feeling of guilt and failure was just happening inside of me, even though I knew for us as a family I was doing so after getting outside help with breastfeeding and a lot of other things, resources that we were building on, we decided that it was best for us not to continue with that process, but then I decided to exclusively pump instead. So it was a hard thing for me, and it was hard for a couple of months, because then, well, how much am I producing, and what am I eating? What can I do in order can I take certain supplements? Is this working? Is that not working? Because there's so many variables in there. My husband was a great support for me throughout that roller coaster of emotions, because I felt really defeated in the beginning. That it was even stressful when I was exclusively pumping, because even though we were still supplementing, I was like, oh, I'm not making enough. I'm not, it's not this. It's like, what did I do wrong? And it's just nature and what it was. But in the long run, through my 15 months of journey through that, I'd say about 3/4 of the way, I was more at ease with how things turned out. And I knew that his health was a priority. I knew why I was making the choices I was making. And looking back, I realized that really it's what's right for my own health, his health, and the health of my family. My husband was an amazing support, listening to me through all of it and offering words of encouragement. And these feelings, I'm sure, will apply to many other things. But I just realized it's the way we handle it that allows us to move forward and even grow stronger from it. So now I would say, our journey with that has ended. But I would say I'm at peace now with what we did and how we were able to navigate through that. But it was difficult. The other thing I would say, lesson is that the power of self-advocacy and the necessity of self-care is critical. So I've had past experiences where I needed to be a strong advocate. So I know the importance of that and the impact it has on a person's life. But those experiences were more with adults and adolescents. I'm typically more of a quiet person. I do voice my opinions and I need to, but having a child puts a whole new perspective on this power, because I feel like he's obviously super vulnerable. So it's allowed me to realize that by giving the power to speak for my child, I need to be stronger and more firmly committed to my opinions and decisions. Um, while I would do anything for him, I need to make sure that my own self-care is also well maintained to give him the best quality of life. And looking at my self-care includes like physical, emotional, and mental well-being. So making sure that I'm drinking enough water and that I'm eating, that again, the resources that I'll share later, that it's been helpful for me, but that I'm taking some downtime, again, even 5 or 10 minutes, to just kind of have some quiet time and a complete break from chaos throughout the day. Especially since we also introduced a puppy into our lives when he was 6 months old. That's a whole nother podcast in itself. But, so it's just having those times to check in with yourself. And finally, I'd say the very simple one is the small stuff isn't worth the aggravation. Just like let it go. And laughter is the best and sometimes only medicine that you can have, especially when you hear your child laugh and being engaged on the smallest little things. It just really puts your perspective together.
Great. Thank you so much, Raquel, for all of those lessons. I really like how you said, there might be things down the road in the beginning. You mentioned that down the road, 5 years, 5 years from now, you may not even realize the lessons that you were learning or, adding to the lessons you've learned. And I really like how you talked about, again, like during this support system, even through the breastfeeding, that you had that support from your husband, not needing to justify it with anybody, but knowing what's best for you, for Noah, for your family, and being able to do that. And then also, keeping in mind, like you mentioned before, that self-care, and just really knowing that, you need to do what's important for you so that you can have that, those different strategies. And I know you also mentioned some resources that also help you keep grounded in that. So thank you. And then what are some changes you may have made to break past family patterns?
So I was actually going to originally skip this question, but after reflecting on it, I really felt that as a new parent for a short period of time, but I really like the question. And I believe it's important for moms to think about it. So having said that, I will say that I don't necessarily have an answer for it, but I have an approach for how I would reflect on that and having self-reflection on a frequent basis. And I think, again, through the resources that I'll share of simple things that I'm doing for myself, it'll help allow me to recognize something I want to change and then work on setting small goals for myself, and even reaching out to other people in your support system, like your mom, your friends, or your husband, to hold accountability for it. So that's kind of all I have on that one. But I think it's an important question to really think about for yourself, because everybody's family patterns are different.
That's a great reflection. I'm glad that, you're like, well, I'm going to skip it, but, tackling it, just thinking, okay, there are changes that I might want to make and make them incremental, small changes. And then if I notice that they come up, for you being able to evolve or, change and be aware of it. So thank you for sharing on that. And then thinking about, I know Noah's very young and probably just starting to speak, and I'm sure probably all over the place by now. But in that, what do you think Noah would say of you as a mom today?
So yes, you have definitely addressed the fact that he's very young. So, and I've been blessed to stay home with him for the first 16 months of his life. So I would say, from him currently only having that perspective of me being home, he saw routines, but he also saw a lot of flexibility since we weren't on time crunches to go somewhere by a certain time. I would hope that he sees dedication to family, and I would also say he would into my schoolwork and different goals that I set for myself. I said earlier, I would say after he was 6 months old, I had to work for about 4 to 5 months on my proposal to get that going. So it was a balance that I had to juggle myself and figure that out. But then he sees me vulnerable, like when I put him to sleep, sometimes I just have little conversations with him about like my dreams, hopes, and fears. So I would say if he doesn't see it now, I hope one day that he sees that I can be an example for him as he navigates through life, of being fully able to feel and express yourself in the moment, gather your thoughts and feelings to move forward, and gain a clear perspective of the current situation to make the best changes for yourself.
That's great. So again, him knowing that it's okay to feel and express himself. I know you mentioned that earlier, that was one of the points I highlighted. And for him to know, again, I like that you said, that is important for him to feel and express and feel like he has a voice. I think that's
Mhm.
important to instill in our kids at a young age. Thank you. And then really similarly, I know you talked not as much on breaking past barriers or, the changes in family patterns, but there are many moms perhaps out there listening, or moms to be, or people that are working through things that continue to become the best version of themselves. And maybe they are a parent right now, but what's happening is that they're really struggling, and how to even make those changes, or how does that look? Because they've never known what healthy family patterns are, right? And or maybe it's a smaller thing where they just don't know how to work with their child on that empathy or building communication skills or whatever that would be. What are some ways to encourage parents that want to become the mother they may not have had, or they may not know how to be right now?
So I was thinking that it's really important to share that it's important to start small. And there may be a huge list of things that you want to tackle and look at, and it gets very overwhelming because you want to make sure everything is right. And right is a very vague term, right? Because it looks different by person, by family, by relationship, even different from one day to another. It's not easy making decisions and trying to figure out the best way. We're all human. And I think that those situations that arise, I can reflect on something and be like, oh, I should have done that differently. So I have to do it, differently next time. We tend not to think about ourselves because we're dealing with the everyday things that we're planning for and what's coming next. And change is not always easy for some people, and being consistent can be difficult. I think that when you have the want to change, though, and the dedication to do it and know what to focus on, it's much easier focusing on one thing at a time, setting those small goals. And when I say support system, that can even just be one person. So having that support system to be able to check in with somebody and explore some resources. So if you're struggling with a handful of things, I really say zero in on one or two and get those going before you add more things on, because it can be overwhelming. And I think when we look at wanting to change a lot at once, that's where we're not as successful because it becomes too much to do.
That's good. And I like that you said just start with small step at a time, and that it may look different for every mom or every background situation or anybody's history. And I like that, it's just like one small thing every day, right? And as you continue to build those habits and you continue to build those steps, you'll constantly see change. And sometimes it can be frustrating, right? To continue to change and evolve. That takes time and it's, changes. So I appreciate, Raquel, your sensitivity, to moms out there, and just knowing that you're doing the best you can, you're enough, and that you're continuing to want to grow. So thank you. And then Raquel, just thinking about moms out there, maybe moms to be or current moms or moms, continuing to evolve and wanting to be the best version of themselves. What are some books or resources that you can highlight? And again, any resource that you highlight, I will make sure that I have in the description, or you'll have the link for it, audience.
Sure, absolutely. So I will start off by saying, before I talk about those, is that, recently I've been thinking about different traditions and values that I want my family to have and carry on. And I think during this time of COVID and just being home more and focusing, it's allowed me to realize even more so how short time is, because we've lost a lot of time with family, as I feel many of you have as well. Like our parents weren't able to physically interact with Noah for months, and it was heartbreaking, to see that and that loss of time. And I also think about things that he may or may not encounter when he's older and how he will handle those situations. So I think about what kind of tools and type of environment will provide for him to help navigate through those easy and not so easy times. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is starting a list of things that are really important to me and ways that as a family we can make sure we spend time together. I asked my husband to do the same thing so that we can really categorize them and prioritize them on things that we want to start. And it may even be by certain ages for him, so it could be things that we were doing ourselves or things that we just look up that now we want to incorporate. But my point is that no matter the person's past or present, maybe the future is always open to change, and how we ultimately want it to be. It doesn't have to be huge changes, like I said before, but just baby steps. So I'm still navigating this as my mom in terms of exploring stuff. I don't have a plethora of resources, but I will share some stuff that I have been doing. So I'm not super active on social media in terms of posting and sharing, but I do go on it because I think that I can find a lot of resources, especially as a mom. So I follow and research different people and groups that focus on the content of parenting. It's been really helpful as I navigate through different decisions or to find additional resources or things to do. So for example, I struggled with, and I say very loosely, the appropriate way to handle my son sleeping at night. So I joined different groups on Facebook, ones that supported sleep trainings, ones that I don't want to say didn't support, took a different approach to sleeping and not doing sleep training. And I joined a variety because I wanted to get different perspectives and resources, not to necessarily copy what somebody else is doing, but just to see what's working, what's not working for others, so I can gain that information and make my own decision for my own family about what is appropriate for us and what works for us. So if you live in the US, I will say that there's a lot of local parent groups by county that are very helpful too for a variety of things, like local recommendations on things to do, doctors to see, sharing activities at a low cost. I think that these resources are so helpful because it ties you to your local community. And you see that even communities that are further away from you, somebody else may have the same feelings as you and you're not alone. The last two things I'd like to share is that within the last 2 months, there was a person I was following on Instagram that referred to devotionals that she was doing on a daily basis. And they were also centered around motherhood. So I saw this before 2 months ago, and it took me a little while to really get into it again, forming that habit and really dedicating the time. With COVID, changes in some of my routines, like going to church and other things that I was doing is not there anymore. So I knew I needed something. So I downloaded the app. It's called Holy Bible, and I explored what they call different plans that were provided. For example, some of them are overwhelmed by my blessings, hot mess, thriving as a mom, and unshakable moms. So the first part of the first part of these is the devotional, which is written by a mom, and then there's short scripture verses that allow you to connect to the devotional. So I really made it a point to carve out time to do this for myself daily. What I need to hone in more on is finding a consistent time to do it, but I make sure I at least do it daily because it provides me with the quiet time I need, a focus, and a perspective in the midst of daily life. The last resource I would like to share is another one I came across on Instagram. So again, this is where that social media has exposed me to different things, but it focuses on affirmations. So you can get them physically, or they have a digital download. I purchased mine from Love Powered Company, and I'm not saying this is the only company. I'm sure there's other resources and ones out there, but this was just the one I came across. So they have a set for, can you see it? On here, they have a set for adults, and then they also have a set for children. This one is from 0 to 12, and they also have a teen set. And it doesn't take much time, but it offers me some time as a person, and I get to share it along with my son as a vision. So some of them that I pulled out because I thought for the adult, it shows and connects to what we were talking about today. But it says like, love is my power. And it says, I am love, I am passionate, I am kind, I give love, I receive love, I embody love, I am love. When did you give or receive love today? How did you feel? And then there was like another one, it says patience is my power, because we spoke about patience today. And then another one talked about health is my power. So I thought these were really great, another great way to do something independently for yourself. And, or you can also revisit it with your child because they have the ones for children. So they have a health one for children. They have a patience one too. And I also pulled out a confidence one that they had there. But my point is that if you're doing health for yourself that day and you want to be on the same page with your child, you can do health for them that day too. Or you can just have them randomly pick what they want. But I thought this was another, at least for me, I found another way to recenter myself, give myself some time to focus on myself, but also figure out how to tie it into my family. There may be other things that you really love to do and you know what they are, just finding the time to do it, I would say is definitely key.
Great. Thank you, Raquel. I appreciate you just showing and highlighting the love, empowered and the different cards that you use and that you not just incorporate it for your own personal time, but then also think how you can incorporate that with your family. So thank you so much for that insight. And then finally, Raquel, I know you've given us so many tips, so many lessons that you've learned along the way as a mom, and also talk to us about some of those struggles and how you reach out for support or can support other moms. But overall, thinking about this whole day, what's one final wisdom tip that you can give to our audience of moms or moms to be or grandmas or again, women that want to have a family? What's one final wisdom tip?
I would say that one final wisdom tip is to think ahead into the future and really look at and envision what do you want that to look like. While it's important to live in the present and in the current day, I think when you have that long-term vision, structuring your present day helps you with that, and will get you to where you want to be. So, but again, to do that and to have that healthy unit for everything, it truly comes to you being healthy for yourself, and taking that self-care. I would say that's probably the one thing that you don't realize. And I don't say this in a negative way because it just is what happens and it's okay, but you don't realize some of the loss of time that you may have for different things that you used to do. So finding that for yourself, it really helps set your tone. And that's why I said before, with some of the things that I do, it would be important to for me to do it consistently in the morning or even at the nighttime to kind of like center myself at night, so that I can, refocus and start the next day, fresh, or start the morning fresh. So that's kind of what I would like to leave everybody with.
Thank you, Raquel. So that was great. Just really talking about your own personal morning routine and really that important piece of that self-care that you continued to have throughout your discussion. So again, it was wonderful hearing your wisdom tips. I'm sure we're all full from that, have some things to put aside. And hopefully if you like those resources, you certainly can. I'll have those posted. Raquel, again, thank you for your time. Now, everybody, if you're watching, please like, share, subscribe, share with a friend on YouTube. And again, I hope you all have a wonderful day. You're amazing and incredible, and you all have your own story. So I hope you continue to find your voice, and make sure you check back again with me tomorrow for another daily dose of wisdom. Be well. Bye, Raquel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.